Bob Mueller right now dialing up pressure on witnesses, holding one in contempt, which sets up an important court battle appealing a Mueller subpoena. That's happening right now. Now, tonight, we're also seeing some of the reaction from Donald Trump's legal team to this pressure. Now, the technical term for what's happening, what's coming from the Trump lawyers, is a meltdown. They are taking their case public, but not through another round of media interviews. Instead, it is a round of Trump lawyers interviewing themselves in the media and moonlighting as guest hosts on none other than Sean Hannity's radio show. Seriously.
Hey, welcome to the Sean Hannity Show. Jay Sekulow and Mayor Rudy Giuliani. How about that? Giuliani and Sekulow.
Isn't that nice?
I am Jay Sekulow, Chief Counsel of the American Center for Law and Justice, and one of the counsel to the President. And Rudy Giuliani, of course, America's mayor, former U.S. Attorney, Department of Justice official. And for purposes of right now, my colleague and co-counsel in a case involving a Russia inquiry that we're engaged in. You may have read something about it. We're also going to be taking your calls.
We're providing the criminal defense for the sitting president, but also taking your calls. If this looks and sounds bizarre to you as a human being living in 2018, that's because it is bizarre. Legally and historically, it's also unprecedented in the entire American archives of criminal defense work for a sitting president. Now, critics of Trump may like this, and we're about to show you more of what they said. Critics of Trump may like it for the same reason that they want him to keep tweeting. More talking and freelancing can provide more evidence for Mueller and incriminating information in plain sight in the public record. In fact, some of the largest recent scoops that have hurt the White House involve Trump or his aides and lawyers talking. The only reason we know Team Trump lied about their story defending the Trump Tower Russia meeting, for example, was because they had told so many stories in the media about it. Now, in today's outing, Trump's lawyers / guest hosts, I don't know, they stress they are not leaking the secret details of their discussions with Mueller. They also criticize James Comey for what they call his leaking, and they use these appearances to try to undercut witnesses and the entire probe.
I think if I were the Attorney General, I would appoint an independent counsel, and I'd appoint the independent counsel for two purposes. Purpose number one, to appropriately prosecute the people who violated these laws. Comey clearly leaked a document that he wasn't supposed to leak.
If you look at the scope and nature of this inquiry, the way it started, the corruption at the outset,
it surely looks like an illegitimate investigation. The President of the United States said this a long time back, that it's a witch hunt.
The other weird part of the bind these lawyers have put themselves in is that instead of taking questions from journalists, as you would in much shorter, not 3-hour appearances, they're taking questions from Sean Hannity fans. And today, one of those fans was out even farther than Trump's lawyers wanted to go.
It's very clear Obama should be charged. The Department of Justice is being lacking its responsibility right now. They should be looking and investigating and charging Barack Obama with abuse of power.
Well, what do you think, Rudy?
I don't want to jump that far.
I don't think you could.
I would agree with you. It is crying out for an investigation.
When the lawyers finished their time with the live callers, they also stressed how serious their work is. And people can evaluate how serious a job is if you can take out 3 hours from it to fill in for Sean Hannity when he has time off.
That is the highest honor that any lawyer could have representing a president and defending the Constitution. And that's why we have to go through a deliberative process.
Yeah, we can't just shoot from the hip. I mean, we have to be able to have thought it out. We have to also be able to answer his questions. And, you know, he takes this very seriously. He does have a desire to explain that he's innocent, which he is, but he also understands his role as president and that he just can't throw aside prerogatives of the presidency.
Joining me to take this very seriously, U.S. Senator Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut, who serves on the Judiciary Committee, former New York Times executive editor Howell Raines, and Harvard professor Leah Wright Rigor. Senator, what is going on?
You know, Ari, I've been on both sides of the courtroom. I've defended criminal cases. I was a United States attorney for Connecticut. I was Attorney General of the state of Connecticut. I have never seen this kind of bizarre behavior from a lawyer in a serious criminal case. In fact, what went through my mind as I listened to them was that a defendant convicted of a crime and later challenging the conviction would have a very good argument that there was incompetent assistance of counsel through a habeas or whatever the appeal might be.
You're talking about a federal ineffective assistance of counsel petition. I will tell you that previously on this show, lawyers have made jokes to that effect. This is one of those days, though, where you're saying it would go into the record and say, look, my lawyer wasn't working much on my case. He was moonlighting, talking about my case.
Any defendant, and most especially the President of the United States, who needs and deserves serious counsel, would have that claim. But there is a really overriding and profound point here, which I think you made, that we're talking here about the President of the United States, who should have some respect for the legal system.
Sure.
He is the commander-in-chief. He's the chief executive in a constitutional system. He's the head of the executive branch. He should respect the rule of law, and he should, of all people, respect the principle that no one is above the law. And yet this president, through Rudy Giuliani, has said, in effect, repeatedly, he won't cooperate with this investigation. He won't be interviewed unless they comply with an equally bizarre set of conditions.
No, I feel torn. Part of me wants to continue to play around the margins of how ludicrous this is with you, and part of me wants to probe the parts of it that actually implicate the investigation. So let me do a little more of the serious part. Sean Hannity is a person who shared a lawyer with the president, Michael Cohen, that he hid from the public, who is now under serious investigation and strain, who just last night the feds finished dealing with the privileged aspects of all the material they raided on him, which includes seizing tape recordings with the president. What does it say, not only about Sean Hannity, who can do whatever he does in the media and say that he's not a journalist, that doesn't follow rules, and that's freedom. What does it say about the president and the judgment of the people around him that, knowing all that, two of the lawyers are going in to literally take the place of Sean Hannity, substitute for him, while continuing what they say is their public advocacy on behalf of their client, the president?
What it says, very seriously, is that they are making a mockery of the judicial system, of the rule of law, of our justice system. And ironically, it is a former United States attorney, Rudy Giuliani, who was in charge of a major office in the Department of Justice, who is the one doing it. It also says that there are these legally incestuous relationships, insidious connections between Hannity and Cohen and lawyers that I think will, at the end of the day, do none of them any good.
Howell Raines, we often draw on your wisdom and experience. We don't talk about age on this show, but as the former person in charge of the New York Times and all of those battles in government and legal matters, you've seen a lot. Have you seen anything like this? And in a period of declining norms and expectations, is it still a night to address the kind of standards that seem to be failing at the White House?
Yeah. I've never seen anything like this. We've never had a moment like this in our country. And you put your finger on something very important, that there's a temptation to enjoy the comedy, but the country is trembling on the brink of tragedy. And as Senator Blumenthal pointed out, it is this assault on not just on the opponents in this legal case, but this assault on the judiciary and the entire constitutional underpinnings of our legal system from someone like Rudy Giuliani. I must say, the soundbite you showed, Ari, I had a hard time distinguishing whether the Hannity caller or the two lawyers of the president were the kookier parties. And we were very cautious at the Times about ever using the word unprecedented, because as soon as you did, someone would cite a precedent that you had ignored. But there is no precedent for this kind of assault on the judiciary, the legal system, directed from the White House. One wants not to get too extreme in language, but right now we saw the Pew show poll today in the Times. 35% of the lesser educated people in this country are in charge, and their agent and his mouthpieces are conducting a war on our legal system.
Right, and I think, Leah, coming to us from your Harvard expertise, education is often maligned in American politics, and not everyone has the financial means or the wherewithal to be highly educated, but a civic education about how things should work and the three branches in the president, that's something we try to get from our government leaders and not think of them typically, traditionally, as demeaning it. With that in mind, take a listen to Rudy Giuliani arguing that effectively the president shouldn't have to tell his side of the story under oath because of the conspiracy theory that automatically everyone will believe James Comey and not him. Take a listen.
I think what we have to get clear is the fact that a lot of people interpret it this way. Well, if he's telling the truth, why wouldn't he just go in and testify? Hey, welcome to the real world. The fact is, he is telling the truth. We're walking him into a possible perjury trap, not because he isn't telling the truth, but because somebody else isn't telling the truth, who they would credit, namely Comey.
Leah?
So I think, there's the line between trying to be a good lawyer for your client and trying to defend your client and being a flat-out propagandist. And I think this is one of the things that is so dangerous about the moment that we're in. We're seeing the erasure and the transformation of norms, of rules, of ethics, of morals, but we're also seeing the transformation of fact. It's one thing, again, to defend your client. It's another thing to go on Sean Hannity's radio show and host it and essentially give into conspiracy theories for 3 hours, including indicting a former sitting president. I think one of the things that we have to talk about really here is the power too of media and of propaganda. And so right now what Trump's lawyers are essentially doing is running a counter PR or counter propaganda campaign and using all of these media networks in order to advance their position. They've been very successful in the past, both in terms of exposure, but also in terms of reaching people from voters, people from across the country. And this is something that we really have to watch out for and really be concerned about. Well,
and Senator, I think that's the only place where you don't want to see them being misleading and false, and there are consequences for that in court. When it comes out to the body you serve in and whether the Senate is ever actively going to adjudicate any of this, it will be ultimately a battle for public opinion. You are answerable to your constituents. And so in that respect, it may be that they are short-term pessimistic about what the Mueller probe will uncover and long-term optimistic about trying to get a lot of the country on their side or confused or defining collusion down. And Rudy Giuliani is clearly going in that direction because it's not just on the radio him sort of freelancing. He wrote out and posted on the internet today, maybe it's time for Sessions to appoint a special counsel to investigate the conspiracy to defeat Donald Trump by buying and disseminating these fake dossiers, illegal wires, and commencing baseless FBI investigations. Now, some of that is false, and we have to note there's not been anything about the wiretaps being found illegal. Some of that is fair opinion. You can debate whether FBI investigations are baseless or not. But when Rudy Giuliani is the president's lawyer and actively calls on Jeff Sessions to be involved in something that he has recused himself on because of the DOJ, he seems to be in a conflict there between what he's allowed to do, which is try to convince the public of something, and what you're not allowed to do, which is go up against the DOJ recusal precisely because Sessions was too close to the campaign.
The recusal was correct. In fact, the Attorney General of the United States had no choice but to recuse himself. And so you're absolutely right that Rudolph Giuliani is asking Jeff Sessions to do something clearly improper, but he is also doing more, which is to discredit or seek to discredit the entire investigation. And that's where I have been so appalled and astonished by many of my colleagues in the United States Congress who have joined in this effort to demean and disrespect not only the rule of law generally, but also Robert Mueller and this investigation. And I will tell you that at the end of this era, when the history is written, I think the heroes are going to be the independent judiciary and our free press. Howell Raines is a great example of that kind of conscience in our media over many, many years, because they have, in effect, exposed this effort to discredit a lawful investigation.
Thank you, Senator. And I must say, I was sharing with Senator Blumenthal earlier, I think the New York Times and the Washington Post and the responsible cable networks have done a really remarkable job of adjusting to a kind of unimaginable daily chaos. And you spoke of norms earlier. I think we, the entities that we were just talking, are the guardians of those norms now. And it's heartbreaking to me that the Republican Party, whose founding to destroy slavery was a landmark in the history of freedom, is silent as this man is waging war on our legal system. And my heart almost broke reading the Times profile of Paul Ryan this week, where he seems oblivious to the realities of what's going on around him.
Well, let me go to Leah on that because we're over on time, but maybe you could tie it all together for us, because the political science of this is the problem, isn't it, Leah, that we have so many people in one party looking at self-preservation over any of the standards and norms they used to talk about?
So it's polarization, it's partisanship, and it's the fact that one party has completely, thrown out the window any semblance of red line in the sand, right? Having a breaking point in favor of a president who most of them once hated. But we also know that, many of them have been implicated in some of the things that have come out, but also, too, that they are incredibly invested in whatever agenda they can push through this president, and using him as a vehicle in the same way that he is using them as a vehicle. So a lot of this is about power as opposed to party, as opposed to concern for the country. One of the things that Toni Morrison said is that racism, that inequality, that all of these kinds of things serve as a distraction. And that's what it is. It's a distraction because the president refuses to take accountability for the kinds of things that he has been doing. We're not focusing on the things that we should be focusing on.
I appreciate that as something to meditate on. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.